Welcome back to the Weekly Manga Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about all of your favorite ongoing Japanese manga. This week on the podcast, it's all about girl power in shonen. That's right, all the manga we're discussing this week have female leads and are amazing. First, we're going to discuss the return of the fabled Ruri Dragon, which has been missing from Weekly Shonen Jump for almost 18 months. Then we're going to tackle chapter 100 of Akane-Banashi titled The Rakugoverse. You heard that right. And finally, we are starting a new arc in Freiren Beyond Journey's End, so we will set that stage. All that, manga news, and more coming right up. Hello again, my name is Bruce, and I am the proprietor of the White Gray Black YouTube channel. This week, I have no podcasting partner like I usually do. He is in the glorious land of the rising sun. He should be back next week to tell us some of his tales. So this week's episode might be a little bit shorter with less people to bounce ideas off of. That being said, once you hit that like and subscribe button while you're here, hop into the comments and let me know how you feel about this week's manga or what your favorite female leads in shonen are so that I can bounce off of you a little bit. This week's going to be a good one. The girls came out strong last week, so let's talk about that. Let's start with Ruri Dragon. Ruri Dragon by Masaoki Shindo. This has a troubled past, troubled history. We got a one-shot of this published, I want to say 2021 that came out, and then late 2022... June or July 2022, I believe this premiered in Weekly Shonen Jump to massive acclaim. Lots of people really liked the series. I really liked the series when it came out. I really liked the one-shot. I think it's really good. I think Ruri as a character is a pretty, I guess I would say, accurate representation of an actual teenage girl. She's a little bit sassy. She's a little bit rebellious. She's much less of, oh, I'm just a nice girl and everybody likes me. She's a little bit, headstrong and rebellious, those kinds of things. I think that's interesting. Really liked the first 6 chapters. After that, in 2022, this series went on hiatus for a long time. I don't think we ever got specifically any news about why that exactly was. Author's health, I think, was assumed, but we aren't sure. But Masaoki Shindo is back. This is chapter 7 of Ruri Dragon. And just a little bit more historical, I guess, on Ruri Dragon. The volume 1 of this came out shortly after it premiered to some insane sales numbers. It was something like a series that premieres and sticks around in Weekly Shonen Jump usually hits something like 25,000 to 25 to 35K. If it hits 50K, it's kind of guaranteed to be like, this is a pretty big hit. 50K volume numbers, that is. Ruri Dragon Volume 1 sold something like 200,000 or 300,000 copies in Japan. So this is a massive hit for Weekly Shonen Jump. If it had not been this massive, I don't think they would have let this author take that big break, take all that time off or whatever. So, but here it is. It's back and it is still good, I would say. We cut off in the middle of a little bit of a climax. Ruri is experiencing some electricity coming off her. Obviously, she has these dragon horns. That's kind of the whole crux of the matter in the series is that her mom, how many minutes are we? 4.5 minutes? YouTube's not listing. Her mom fucked a dragon, and we get Ruri. And that's interesting. Her mom, I think, is also a fun character. We'll see that later. Ruri Dragon has this electricity going on in class. One of the best parts of all this is it eventually kind of dies down. Everyone is freaking out around her, obviously, which this has happened, right? She blew fire in, I want to say, chapter 1 or 2. That was also kind of funny. Her teacher is the funniest character because he's very nonplussed. He's very not bothered by all this stuff going down, all this stuff happening with Ruri. So he's just like, okay, whatever. He's like, be safe, go to the nurse, where were we? And continues his lesson, which I think is really funny. And Ruri is starting to really stress about this stuff. So again, she says more dragon crap, I'm guessing. Again, Ruri's attitude in this, I really enjoy. She's not just like, oh my gosh, more dragon powers, or oh no, this is such a sad thing for other people. She's sort of selfish, in a way that children tend to be, right? Where they don't have the kind of worldly experience which older people have to be able to do that, which, most authors are older. If you're writing a shonen, 14-year-old boys, 14-year-old girls, whatever is the lead, you're generally not that age. You're past that age. And I think a lot of times it's hard for authors to look back and still remember what they were like at that age, how most of us were like at that age, sort of selfish, rebellious, self-centered, not as good people as we are now, hopefully. So yeah, she's, more dragon crap now. She calls her mom and asks about this, and her mom is funny because sort of unbothered by it. Like, oh yeah, whatever. But this is also coming from a woman who, as I mentioned 2 minutes ago, fucked a dragon. So, here's her mom. It's like, hey, she says like, hey, Yuka, her friend who's there with her. She's like, Yuka, like, you have permission to run if anything happens to Ruri again, just get out of there. You can just run. And her mom just hangs up. There we go. And Ruri notes, not one for long goodbyes. Again, something I like about Ruri, shown in just even the very start of this chapter, is these characters are not the sort of prototypical shonen characters where the teacher isn't this, super helpful, super concerned sensei. They're very much just sort of like, I'm teaching my lesson and you're interrupting it. Are you done? All right, we're getting back to it. The mom isn't some sort of non-character, not concerned. She works an office job. She's essentially a single mom, right? And she's very much just sort of like, you'll be fine. If anything happens, get out of there, and hangs up on her daughter, right? So this is not, I just like that it's non-typical characters that we're seeing here. And it's really good. I really like it. The last time of the chapter where he gets told to stay after class, be part of the cleanup crew along with this girl. What is her name? I don't even know if we get her name. But anyways, I helped this girl who clearly is kind of freaked out and I think ran away from her earlier in the chapter. And Ruri's trying to sort of confront her about it, right? Part of being headstrong and rebellious and all that is her sort of headstrong attitude of like, just talk to me, just be honest, just whatever, don't avoid me. It's another thing that Ruri isn't internalizing or confusing anything. She's sort of taking action and going after it, which I think is a good character trait for any character, really. We like watching characters go out and do stuff, and he or she, instead of just internalizing, or we don't get idiot plot, right, where these two will just not talk to each other, even though the lighter-haired girl is not opening up, Ruri is pressing her. She's going out of her way. She's saying, tell me what's wrong. You got something against me. Why are you ignoring me? You took one look at me at lunch and ran away. And she even says right here, she's like, I won't get it unless you tell me. What did I do to you? And she says, is it my horns? Do they bother you? And the other girl finally says, just stop. And we get this series of pages, which I really liked, which is why they're a little bit bigger here. She says, just don't talk to me, okay? Which is very, again, very typical child response, like just, Mom, don't talk to me, and running away. And Ruri, that kind of actually takes Ruri back. Ruri thinks like, oh, if I'm just headstrong and push her, she'll tell me what's wrong. Even if she doesn't like me, I'll know the truth or whatever. And instead, she just kind of gets like rebuffed and pushed away. And she says, just don't talk to me. Like, I'm not going to tell you what's wrong. Stop talking to me. And clearly in kind of an angry way, because Ruri responds here, we see kind of in the upper left, just kind of sure, right? Like, okay, you don't want me to talk to me? Okay. She rides the bus home, or maybe the train. I think it's a bus stop, but and she looks kind of, this is interesting. This is something I saw pointed out, I think on Twitter or maybe on Reddit, but that I didn't pick up on. But Ruri in these panels here, you'll notice it's raining sort of at the bottom when she gets off the bus. You can tell from these pages, even without any dialogue, that this really sits with Ruri in kind of a negative way. This really affects her. And what that other conversation that I mentioned points out is that it's raining. Ruri seems kind of extra sad in the bottom right, and the bottom left, she has an umbrella, and she chooses not to use it, right? She gets home, and her mom notes that she's all wet and all that stuff. So essentially what the user said was they think, oh, Ruri was probably crying and using the tears to kind of or using the rain to cover up her tears. I think it's that, or it could just be one of those. When you're sort of emotionally defeated, you care a lot less about what's going on outside around you. So, just walking through the rain while you're sad is, it's a trope for a reason. It's a thing that people do, especially when you are an emotional teenager, I would say. So, she gets home, talks to her mom. Again, her mom's kind of, not that she's not taking it seriously, but her mother is very sort of like, oh yeah, like dragons, whatever, right? Like, again, this is the woman who slept with the dragon and had its baby. So she's like, might as well sit down for a chat, wants them to drink milk. It's like, Ruri notes, she says, hey, wait, what are we chatting about? What are we chatting about? Her mom says, that thing you called me about. And her mom says, well, about your latest dragon train. And Ruri, again, another reason why I like her, sassy child. She says, yeah, what mutant power am I blessed with now? Blessed in all caps there. And her mom says, well, dragons can call lightning, which again, we saw at the start of the chapter. She had this electricity going around her. And Ruri looks, not much like most teenagers who go through changes. And again, this is one of the reasons I think Ruri Dragon is a good series so far is writing a story with people at this age where a key part of the writing doesn't involve the sort of changes that come along with being a teenager at this age. Kind of misses a very, key development thing, in my opinion. So Ruri's doing a good job with essentially tying, the melody of puberty, the changes that you go through at that time of your life with, dragon things, right? Like you go through changes, you think you're alienated from everyone, everybody feels like you're different or you don't fit in or whatever. These are sort of shared experiences for a lot of us, for a lot of people, and saying, well, you're a dragon now. I think it's a good, interesting angle to go about it. So Ruri Dragon is great. I'm really glad this series is back. I really like this chapter. I like where it's going. I really, really like the one shot. If you aren't totally sold on Ruri Dragon from reading the chapters, or maybe you haven't started yet, again, we're only 7 chapters in. It takes, less than an hour, probably take you 30 minutes to catch up on Ruri Dragon. Go do it. It's on Manga Plus. I think it's on Viz also. It's definitely on Manga Plus. So, go check it out. Yeah. Ruri Dragon's great. Super glad that it's back. Okay. Ruri Dragon, next up. Oh boy. Akane-Banashi. Wow. This is... So Akane-Banashi now, we're hitting right at about 2 years old. I believe it started maybe February 2022. That seems about right. Maybe late January. What a series. You hear Gautam and I talk about this, I think, every time Akane comes up, which we talk about it quite often because it is insane. I think we talked about it 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think this is probably the most consistently well-written thing for the past 2 years in Shonen Jump. And again, I'm a big One Piece fan. I think Sakamoto Days is great. I think Blue Box has done some really good stuff. I think it all pales in comparison. I think Akane-Banashi might actually be the best thing in Jump. I think it was the best thing in Jump in 2023. An argument could be made. I won't make a final decision. Anyways, this series absolutely rocks. Again, this is Akane-Banashi by Yuki Suenaga, art by Takamase Moe, and there's a Rakugo supervisor who I think probably deserves a co-author credit on this more than just a Rakugo supervisor credit, named Keiki Hayashia. Chapter 100 is titled The Rakugo Verse. So if you aren't aware of what the series is about Rakugo, which is a sort of stage storytelling production type thing. I like to compare it to, if you ever listen to NPR Public Radio Hour, they do a thing called the Moth Radio Hour, where people just get up on stage and tell stories. This is kind of like that, but it is more historical precedents, taught stories that have kind of been passed down from the Edo era, from sort of 1700s era Japan. Or the Edo area, which is Tokyo. So Akane in this chapter, or the previous chapter, is on stage. She's telling her story. She's telling Tanuki Dice, I think is the name of the story she's telling. I won't get into a whole lot of super details here, but essentially what she does is she tells the story, and as she's telling it, she starts to introduce she starts to sort of introduce people note characters from other Rakugo stories. Now, this is not an invention done by Akane in this story, right? There are a lot of stories in Rakugo. There's, I don't even know how many. There's like 400 or 500 or something. They have a lot of crossover stuff, right? There's, I don't remember all of them exactly, but the Tanuki shows a bunch of times, and it can be implied to be the same Tanuki. There's certain salesmen or traveling people or just characters who are just like, oh, this character who is maybe the the main potter in one story shows up in another story as a side character. He goes and talks to the potter, right? So these characters are not kind of specific named people, right? I don't know if any of the characters in Rakugo are named other than the famous Jugumo. If you know that one, you know it. They're all just sort of named after what their profession is or wife of profession, just because that's how it kind of works. But what Akane does while she's telling the story of Tanuki dice, the dice kind of rolls away and rolls through town. She yells, somebody catch that dice. And she notes on stage, right? She's like, what is this feeling? She's like, I can see more than usual. And she goes into the story. She's kind of back in this storytelling world. The way the visuals are presented here, right, is while a Rakugo is telling a story, we will often obviously see on the manga page the story represented instead of the storyteller. That is just, a choice they make. So in this chapter, in the previous chapters, and anytime Akane is telling a story, performing Rakugo, we flip between sort of her on stage on these pages and her in the story on the pages on the left. So she's telling the story, but she's not in the story technically, right? Technically, there's a guy in there who's trying to swindle people using these Tanuki dice. So the person but Akane has kind of self-inserted her into this Rakugo world, claps. Tanuki turns into a manju, which is a sort of like sort of like a mochi, I think. I don't know exactly, but and you get again, this is the first example here where she sort of introduces one of these characters that's not from this story and isn't. I believe the implication here is that he's not technically strictly written into this story, into Tanuki dice. He's from another story. He runs into somebody, right? He says, I got a manju stuck in my throat as a boy. Ever since then, I've been terrified of manju. And this guy notes her. He's like, hang on. It says, this is scared of manju, right? This guy in the audience knows, hey, this is a different story. Again, back in the story world, Tanuki changes again into a huge paper bill, and someone notes it's like, hey, and now it's Tanuki money, which is a different story, right? So we've had a crossover with Tanuki dice, scared of manju, Tanuki money, right? These are three different Rakugo stories that are now sort of intersecting in Akane's world. You see where this is going, right? With the title of the chapter, and Akane kind of realizes maybe what her special weapon is. There's this idea, I think it's just called nin or jin or something in the story of what your power is, what your specialty is, how you can draw and sort of bring people into the story world. And Akane had been a good storyteller, as noted. She won competitions in the past. She beat her fellows. She's rising through the ranks very quickly. She's clearly not a struggling to be a good storyteller, though she hasn't always been the best. And this is such a cool chapter for this reason, right? This is her sort of discovering her secret weapon, right? Unlocking the powers she has inside her. She's up until now, my entire Rakugo was based around how to fit within the lines. And you see this Tanuki following her, right? And she says, but now that the world has expanded, I have room to play. I can do anything. Here in this Rakugo zoo. She says, no, in the Rakugo verse, anything is possible. I'm going to guess that this is probably a translation liberty by Stephen Paul here. Stephen Paul does this. Is the English translator for this. Easily the best translator. He also does One Piece. Has some of the best translations of Naoki Urasawa's work. I will call him out every time I talk about Akane or One Piece. But this is really cool. This is Akane realizing sort of that she didn't invent this. She didn't invent the fact that some of these characters cross over, but people who are familiar with Rakugo know, right? They know that, oh yeah, the Tanuki's in a couple of stories, a bunch of stories. this character who has this one trait appears again, and she sort of knows that, like, hey, if I just imagine all these stories sort of taking place in a singular world, in a singular place, if she uses her massive imagination, which we've kind of been used again as that visual storytelling device to show us the story as it happens as she tells us, implied to be kind of her imagination type thing. She can just go in there and play around, right? She's just invented a world that she can go inside, right? And they all cross over because why can't they? They're all in the same thing. Great reaction face up here. We have the other Rakugo performers in the background, in the backstage, watching her perform. And big issue here is she's doing great. People are smiling. It's too risky a situation in a situation where her promotion is on the line. They're afraid that she is basically unleashing her new technique too soon before it's unrefined or practiced. They're saying this could backfire on her, and they look at the sort of the older Rakugo master who her dad brought back a couple chapters ago, and he's also smiling. So that's a good sign because it's his endorsement that Akane is kind of vying for right now in this chapter. So. The people in the back, they say this could be trouble. Maybe I pushed her too hard, egged her on. They say she's way more into it than I expected. If I were in her position, I'd be going on and on endlessly. Because we have a guy come in a previous page and say, hey, she's doing great. The people love her. But this isn't about her, right? This is about the other premiere of the new, I'm forgetting all the titles. The higher up guy, right? The pompadour dude here. And this is, hey, like, she's got 2 minutes left and she is not anywhere near the end of the story. So they're a little concerned that she's going to go over time, which is, bad, how would you say it? Bad business, I guess you could say, in Rakugo. So the gambler guy in the back says, up to Lady Luck. Akane even notes in this little flashback up here, says the most important thing is that this event is a success. Again, everyone's nervous, and he's like, this is going to work out, right, Akane? So we'll have to see what happens next chapter. That's the end of this chapter. We'll see if she might sort of discover her secret weapon, realize her power, and rapture the audience, go too long, and not, get whatever endorsement she needed here. I could see that happening. This could be sort of a career setback for her, but also personal growth. I think that would be fine. I could also see her figuring out a way using the Rakugo-verse to end this faster than they would know. I could also see that happening and everything sort of going swimmingly, and then everyone realizing, hey, this girl's really something special. She showed us her secret power. It's this cool new thing that no one's seen, where she's crossing over Rakugo stories. So if you go and listen to her tell 5 of them, they'll intersect somewhere. It's a Rakugo-verse. She's built a whole world around a world that was already sort of built and interconnected in ways that storytellers kind of knew, but the audience maybe didn't totally realize. It's really cool. It's really awesome. Akane is great. As much as I talked about loving Ruri Dragon, Akane is like, again, I absolutely adore this series. I think Akane is the best main character in Weekly Shonen Jump right now. Not to say much of Luffy, who I think is great, or Sakamoto, who's also good, or Shin in Sakamoto Days. Like, those are good characters. I enjoy those characters. Akane is on another level. This series is on another level. This is great. This is enthralling. And this is going to get an anime eventually, probably pretty soon. And it's gonna blow up. I know that we say this a lot of how a lot of manga success and stuff is based on the anime premiering and doing well and being animated well. But I predict that Akane, it's just, they're going to get a good studio to do it. I think it's making them a lot of money. I think it's very popular. People love it. I love it. It's great. Girl power. Awesome. Last thing on our list, something people are a little bit more familiar with, as this one already has an anime premiere, is Freiren Beyond Journey's End, or Freiren at the Funeral, which I still think is a better title. It's a little bit more ominous and scary. This is chapter 126, A New Mission. Freiren is story by Kanehito Yamada and art by Tsukasa Abe. kind of a two-parter in this chapter here. We are starting a new arc. We got a little mini arc before this where Freiren and Fern and Stark kind of encounter which I will see by the end of this chapter was good foreshadowing, right? Good, even though it is kind of a part of the same arc. It's very involved. And you think, oh, what is this? This is a cool little 2 or 3 chapter interlude, and then actually that's foreshadowing that leads into the next thing. But they in that flashback they encountered I think they called him like a shadow assassin or something, whose job it was to kill a bunch of mages. The last person, he was like 80 or 90 years old or something, and the last person on his list is Freiren. Finally comes through. He tries to do it. They sort of fight him off and let him go, and he kind of reconsiders what he's been doing, keeps living. I think I'm remembering those chapters right. So this chapter starts with this is Ubel and Land. And we know them from the mage test or whatever it's called, right? Which I think is going on in the anime right now. So people might be more familiar with this. This has been probably 2 years since they were in this series for me for reading it. So, but Ubel tracks down Land, kind of breaks into his house. They kind of talk. Land feels really threatened, so he ends up running away from her eventually. She even notes, right? She's very, how do we describe Ubel? Aggressive, straightforward, dominatrix vibes. She's like, with suspicious eyes, don't run away from me. And he's like, I'm not running anywhere. And he goes into his room, gets his suitcase, and says, right, time to run. Yeah, and he's like, he didn't even know what he wants. He goes to he goes to say goodbye and pray at his grandma's grave. He tells Ubel a little bit about the past and the history and what his grandma did, which might came back. So he says again, couldn't find a way to leave this village. I think he ended up, I believe he's the one in the sort of mage test who is like astral projecting like himself, like he's not a real person at all. Like he was inside his house the whole time. And again, so Ubel and Land they have this little discussion, and he's like, okay, like, what do you want from me? If you're here to kill me, you'd better just do it. And she's like, nope, I have news from the Continental Magic Association. They want a pair to carry out the next mission. And Land says, who's the pair? Why didn't you tell me that before? She's like, it's you and me, 4 eyes. And he immediately says they definitely chose the wrong people. This is a dynamic I really like. The kind of, I don't want to go outside of my comfort zone. I'm very introverted. Don't talk to me. Lost people near me. That kind of strong mage, and the very sort of fun, playful, flirty, kind of dark, aggressive, powerful Ubel. These two are going to be fun together. I am excited. I hope that we get to see more of their point of view going forward. But we'll see. So that's kind of the first half. That is basically the first half of the chapter. They kind of go off on their mission. And then we get a jump to, again, we get kind of our normal chapter intro here, right? Which you usually see 31 years after the death of Himmel the hero, Imperial territory. This is Iceberg. I almost said it with an N in there. It is not Eisenberg. It is Iceberg. Iceberg? I don't know how to speak German. The Imperial capital. So this is a big city. Probably the biggest city they've been to yet, maybe second biggest. But Freiren, Fern, Stark, they're in a sort of meeting with these continental mages, I think they're called. They say, as you know, here in Iceberg, we are in the midst of a National Foundation Festival. The final day of which 2 days from now, a large ball will be held where the leading figures from the Imperial territories and Northern lands will gather. Mistress Sari was invited. Sari, if you don't remember, is the extremely powerful other elfin mage who I think, again, is kind of from the mage test, the mage exams, whatever you want to call those. Freiren notes a couple of times, she generally thinks Sari is more powerful than her, older than her, more experienced, afraid of her in a way, but not sort of in a threatening way. Like Sari isn't actually more of like a fighting aggressive mage, but yeah. Anyways, they say Mistress Sari was invited as the representative of the Continental Magic Association. And so Freiren's like, okay, what's the mission? Like, she's like, don't tell me we're somebody's bodyguards. They say, a first-class mage who's been undercover at the Empire informed me there is a chance that Mistress Sari will be assassinated at this ball that is coming up. And Fern's like, assassinate Mistress Sari. It's like, I have a hard time accepting that's even possible, right? Again, a mage stronger potentially than even Freiren, and we've seen Freiren do, some wild shit. She's very strong. So they go into this kind of discussion of, well, mage versus mage, nobody's going to beat Sari, but the reason that these powerful mages aren't invincible, and the reason why they go and have these little hero parties, the reason why there's warriors and rogues and assassins, is essentially like in very close combat where reaction times aren't long enough, you can kill a mage, right? She essentially says like a mortal warrior who's close enough and can just draw a sword and chop her head off, like it's over before she can think, right? And if the mage can't think, cast a spell using mana, change her mana, change any, do any spells or anything like that, it's over too fast. Nothing she can do. So they give a little more information. These other two powerful mages, Falsh and I can't remember the other one. Will be Sari's personal bodyguards. They're both capable of hand-to-hand fighting, even against warriors. And Stark's like, what do you think, Stark? Can you take him down? He's like, do you think? And he's like, I think they would rip me to shreds. Fern says if the assassins are like the other opponents we faced, who were specialists in close combat, it seems you'd have a better chance attacking them with spells. And this is where it kind of calls back to the last little mini arc that we had, the last 2 or 3 chapters, where we saw that even as powerful as Freiren is and Fern, and Stark altogether, obviously, they were all sleeping in the same building. The assassin guy from that past arc still, jumped, was fast enough to get onto Freiren, have a knife at her throat. Now, he obviously didn't execute her, didn't kill her. He stopped before he did that. But if he wanted to, he could have, right? And Freiren would have been dead. And, and then they would have attacked him after and he would have been dead. But, right, it was a good way to foreshadow and show us that, like, this is possible, right? This guy who's experienced, even though he was old, was able to get close enough to Freiren, who we know is one of the strongest mages. And a martial person got close to kill her, so that is possible. And then we get a nice little tease of who I assume is going to be our antagonist for this new big plot, which I'm excited for because I think the big kind of multi-chapter plots and arcs of Freiren are really, really good. I'm thinking about the Mocked of El Dorado arc, which 2 years ago, I think, on the awards, got our best arc of 2022 because that was absolutely amazing. That whole section. So yeah, we get this new bad guy in the pages, right? It's a time for a mission. Let him freshen up. He has a scar. He has the eye patch, which I think we saw sort of a callback to the other things. He says, "My face won't remain in the shadows of history, but it will be the last face the person on the list will see." Again, mentioning a list, which could maybe be the same list we saw in the last 3 chapters with the other assassin who was there to kill Freiren. Unclear so far. So this guy might be more directly related than we know. I don't think we have quite enough info yet. And again, we get sort of Armada Your Excellency. So this guy is high up. So maybe he's an imposter or impersonating someone, or maybe he actually is just, a royal or a noble or something like that. But yeah, I'm really excited. Getting the start of a brand new Freiren arc is exciting, again, because stuff like the mage test, whatever, what is that actually called? I'm going to Google it. The royal mage exam, whatever you want to call it, and then Mocked of El Dorado in the past. Both those arcs were long, multi-chapter, and easily the best parts of Freiren outside of the first 5 or 6 chapters. So really excited for this. Again, another very girl-forward, girl power series. Very happy about this. Love to see it. Let's go over a little bit of news. That's it for manga discussion. So, just a little bit of news this week, not too much. Kakurabachi gets an English release. That's fast. In case you didn't know, usually English releases for a brand new series like this take, I don't know, a year and a half, sometimes 2 years, so volume 1 of Kakurabachi would have come out, I guess last fall or winter, maybe November, December. But yeah, and this has already been licensed in the West. This is the second fastest new series from Shueisha Licensing. The first one is Samurai 8, which was by the author of Naruto, Kishimoto. So you can see why that got picked up so fast. And this is second fastest. That's pretty big. And I think this is going to hopefully really help and improve the chances of Kagurabachi to survive. I think that the fact that Viz, I'm pretty sure it's Viz, or whoever wanted to get this licensed and published in the West so fast shows that they have confidence in it, and that it was. I do think the popularity of Kagurabachi was fueled a lot by the West and the memes that kind of came out when we got that announcement. The sword draw meme, right? Was a good one for a couple weeks there. But I mean, speaking on the series, I'm up to date with it. I think it's pretty good. It's nothing super special, right? Like it's not on Akane level. But I don't know. Every once in a while, you get hit with a pretty series that starts really strong. I really like how proactive the main character is. This most recent chapter, we're kind of following the main bad guy, right? The mob boss, essentially. He goes into his private office, and the MC is there with his partner, and they're just like, "Let's go." I think stuff like that's really cool. The more I read it, the more it is just kind of sword Batman. He's very kind of a dark, brooding, bring to justice type character. So I can definitely see that. Kagurabachi sword Batman, English license. That's exciting to see. The Golden Kamui live action drama announced. So this, I believe, is going to be a TV show following the first. I think there were two movies, maybe two Golden Kamui movies made, maybe just one, but they did really well in Japan. That series is absolutely fantastic. If you have not read Golden Kamui, go give it a try. I've sold it before recently. You can go back a couple of weeks and listen to that. That happened when I got back from Japan. So the end of December, if you go check out December, January episodes, you'll hear me talking about it. But Golden Kamui is wonderful. It's one of those sort of all-encompassing series where it does everything well. It's funny, it's action-packed, it's violent, it's adult, it's childish, it's great, it has drama. Yeah, Golden Kamui is a little bit of everything. Excited to see this. That also means I think they said more movies planned. Yeah, so it really is kind of like an HBO drama type thing where, you could probably cover all of Golden Kamui in 7 or 8 seasons, quote unquote. So, maybe one movie, 2 or 3 seasons, 2 or 3 movies, something like that. But yeah. So One Punch Man season 3, we got a trailer and that should be exciting, but I am not going to hold my breath for this because JC staff, essentially. It's the same people who did season 2. Season 2 was bad. Season 1 is quite possibly one of the greatest 12 or 13 strings of animated episodes ever, right? The action did justice to Murata, which is difficult to do because I think Murata is hands down the greatest action artist in manga, and quite possibly one of the greatest action artists of all time across all comics, across all art forms. He's amazing. And season 1 really rose to match him, and season 2 did not. So hopefully season 3 there will keep up with him. They've had more time. They've had a lot of time, but I'm not sure. We also got an announcement for Parasite the Grey, which is going to be a Korean series, which is based on the manga by Hitoshi Iwaki, that premieres in April, from the director of Train to Busan, Yeon Sang-ho. So lots of things crossing over here, right? Japan and Korea. Cool little crossover there. I think the Train to Busan guy is the perfect guy to pick for this. Parasite is, I watched the newer anime when it came out, 2014 maybe, maybe 2012. Really, really enjoyed that. A really cool series, really interesting take on sort of the, typical shonen power from space alien type thing. I really enjoyed that. So we'll see if Parasite the Grey hits on the things that I liked about Parasite or not. I'll probably be checking that out in April, but we'll see. Also out of Korea, Elden Ring is going to get a full-color dark fantasy webtoon titled Elden Ring Become Lord by Hand Punch, which I assume is an artist or author that people might know. That's going to be on Kadokomi Web starting at the end of March. This addition, of course, to the comedy manga that's there. So that's it for manga. I'll go over my one more thing. I've been playing Final Fantasy VII ReBirth. This game rocks. This game is awesome. It is amazing. I am 35 hours in. I'm like maybe right at halfway, maybe not quite halfway. Yeah, a lot to do. Big kind of open world, open series thing. Really funny. This game is like really leaning into how goofy and fun things can be in a JRPG. The action is still sick. item and weapon management and stuff is the right amount for me in a JRPG. So really, really enjoying that. So yeah, I think that's it. Hey, thanks again for listening and watching, everybody. Don't forget to leave us some feedback, comments, upvote, thumbs up. Tell us again who your favorite female lead in Shonen is. I'd love to hear about it. Any kind of positive reinforcement you can leave us, please go do that. Don't forget, if you would want to listen to us, we are on most of the main podcast things. We're on Apple Podcasts. We are on Spotify. We can get RSS. And if you are listening to us and you want to see the panels that we're talking about, you can go check out the YouTube channel. I believe that is just Weekly Manga Podcast. That hopefully should come up. We really appreciate comments. Go like Twitter and Patreon. Check out Twitter and Patreon, linked in the description. And that's it, everybody. Hey, thank you for being with us yet again this week. And don't forget, of course, to read more manga.